daily business, and you're suddenly picked up by the police. They begin to question you about a recent rape and murder of a 10-year-old girl that's been in the news lately. And before you know it, you've been led by their questioning to incriminate another person of this crime after the police dangle a $10,000 reward in front of you. Wait, it gets better though. Unbeknownst to you, the person that you incriminated has, due to those same interrogation tactics, claimed that you are the killer. While there's no evidence linking either of you to this heinous crime, there is a massive public outcry to find the killer, and because of this outcry, you're put on trial. Despite the total lack of any physical evidence or even a motive, you are not only convicted, but sentenced to death by lethal injection. Never mind the fact that one of the detectives on the case was so certain of your innocence that he resigned his position to testify for the defense. Now, if you think I'm making all this up, think again. I've just related to you the basic facts regarding the case of Rolando Cruz, an Illinois man who was convicted and sentenced to die for the rape and murder of 10-year-old Janine Nicarico in 1985. He and his legal team fought with the Illinois Attorney General for nearly 10 years of retrials, appeals, and hidden prosecutorial wrongdoing, with his life in the balance. Now, I'm going to use the case of Rolando Cruz, along with other evidence, to show why the death penalty is inherently unjust and should be outlawed. The death penalty is unjust from both a racial and economic standpoint, as well as when the possibility of error or outright malfeasance is considered. From a racial standpoint, Professor David Baldus, a master's graduate of Yale Law School, did a study and report to the American Bar Association in 1998. In this study, he found that in 96% of the states where there have been reviews of race and the death penalty, there was a pattern of discrimination based on either the race of the victim, the race of the defendant, or both. In all of these cases, non-white perpetrators were generally given the death penalty more often than whites, and that was even more so when the victim was themselves white. From an economic standpoint, while the rich can afford representation capable of either getting to the truth of the matter or capable of muddying the waters to maximize the chances of acquittal, as many feel happened with the O.J. Simpson case, the poor are less likely to be able to afford reliable, let alone superior legal representation, leading to subpar defenses that are more likely to result in wrongful convictions and capital sentences. One of the biggest examples of this occurred in 1984, when Calvin Burdine's capital murder conviction was actually reversed, thanks in part to the fact that officers of the court saw his attorney fall asleep in court several times for up to 10 minutes at a time. How can you have a good defense if your own attorney falls asleep in court? He couldn't afford anything better, though. Now, the risk of error or wrongdoing is also a very important consideration. According to the Death Penalty Information Center, between 1973 and 2010, 138 death row inmates have been exonerated of the crime that they were sentenced to death for supposedly committing. They didn't do it. The death penalty has been given to enough people who have been later completely exonerated prior to their execution that, given the fact that humans make mistakes, it's almost certain that innocent people have been executed. And that doesn't even take wrongdoing into account. Going back to the case of Rolando Cruz, in November 1985, prior to his arrest and trial, another man by the name of Brian Dugan was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms without parole for 2 unrelated similar homicides that he committed in nearby areas. At the time of his arrest, he had also confessed to the Nicarico murder, the murder that Cruz was convicted of. But this information was withheld by prosecutors from the defense in Cruz's later retrials and appeals. That's a clear violation of the law. Also during Cruz's appeals, a sheriff's lieutenant who had provided key evidence at the original trial reversed his testimony and admitted that he lied under oath. In more current news, just yesterday, I'm actually kind of glad that I wasn't able to do this speech on Thursday because this happened yesterday and also helps me out here. Just yesterday, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals granted a stay of execution for Hank Skinner. He was convicted for the 1993 murder of his girlfriend and her 2 sons, despite the fact that several items were not tested for DNA evidence that could have exonerated him. Skinner claims that he asked his lawyers to have the items tested, and the lawyers chose not to do so. The Texas authorities have been fighting his request every step of the way for the last 10 years. Now, Skinner's current lawyer, Rob Owen, put it best when he asked, why wouldn't the state want to make sure that they have the right guy before carrying out the ultimate punishment? Especially considering the fact that the test would only cost $550. That's a pretty small sum when you consider that the average death penalty case costs around $2.3 million. Now, are Texas authorities so afraid of being proven wrong that they're fighting to stop a $550 test to make sure they're not trying to kill an innocent man? Now, ending the death penalty would remove both these economic and racial injustices and also ensure that either mitigating or exculpatory evidence has time to get out. This would reduce, if not outright remove, the chance that innocent people would die. Now, but without outlawing the death penalty, its racial and economic inequities, along with the fact that humans make mistakes, will ensure that innocent people will continue to be executed. Now, to finish the story of Rolando Cruz, he was primarily due to DNA evidence, eventually fully acquitted after a 10-year battle with the Illinois Attorney General's office, a battle in which the Assistant Attorney General assigned to the case resigned in protest over what she considered false testimony, among other acts of wrongdoing. Cruz also received a $3.5 million civil settlement with the county he was tried in, and the public outcry over this case was credited as one of the reasons for the moratorium and eventual full repeal of the Illinois death penalty in 2011. In enacting the 2000 moratorium, then Governor George Ryan said that the Illinois system was, quote, fraught with error. How can this be stopped? Well, pretty simple. You can contact Governor Daniels, the Attorney General, his name is Greg Zoller, and also your state representatives. Let them know what you think. I put the relevant information on business cards here. If anyone would like one, feel free to ask me and I can hand one over to you. Does anyone have any questions?
Oh, any questions for Chad? How do you feel about the death penalty here?
I think it's, in some cases, absolutely.
Absolutely what? Necessary or
Yeah, necessary. Like the guy up in, I forget what state it was, but was killing all the prostitutes and had their bodies in his freezer and everything.